Hey, let's chat, y'all. So today I just wanted to do a really kind of quick video about some things related to therapy, how to find a therapist, how do you know your therapist is the right fit, and how you can prepare for therapy. Now, I do have another video on my channel that talks about how you can prepare for therapy, but I wanted to do something just, kind of quick and to the point that includes more so things about how do we know like the therapist is the right fit and how do we start the process. I think that because of the pandemic, people are seeking out therapy more than they've ever been, and they've also had some difficulty finding therapists who have availability. And so while there is not much I can do about that, I can give you some tips and some suggestions to jumpstart your process and to make sure that once you're in the process, you're benefiting from it at the highest degree. So let's just get straight into it. How do you find a therapist? We're going to start with, if you have insurance, you want to start with your insurance company, because if you don't have to pay for therapy out of pocket, then you shouldn't. So you, number one, either want to go on their website and snoop around, look to see where you find mental health, behavioral health sections where it should pretty much show you providers that are already in your network, right? What I will say is sometimes if you find a provider, let's say, because I get this issue a lot. On, like the directories that I'm in, Therapy for Black Girls Psychology Today, it says that I take Blue Cross Blue Shield. However, it did not give me the option to specify that I only accept PPO plans, right? So I get a lot of people that reach out to me that may have Blue Cross Blue Shield, Blue Cross Blue Choice, or they may have an HMO plan. And what I've seen is sometimes if you have an HMO and you find a provider that does not have the HMO, you may be able to call your insurance company and find out, what do I need to do or what options are available to me to see that provider, even though I have an HMO plan. So I have a client who she switched, I had probably been seeing her for about 10 months, right? And so at the end of the year, she switched her insurance company. Well, she didn't switch companies, but she switched plans. So instead of having a PPO, she now has an HMO. She was very dead set on seeing me. So what we ended up being able to work out is when I see her, her insurance company, she pays for it, and then she goes and her insurance company reimburses her. She also has what's called a flex card. So if you have a flex card, meaning your insurance, job, whatever, gives you a certain amount of money to spend on medical expenses within a year, then she's able to use that to pay her copays or to pay us out of pocket. When I say us, I'm talking about me and the other therapists that I work for. Like, we're an entity in a sense. So she pretty much, she pays us up front, and then she gets her money back from the insurance company. So it's not that it's impossible, but you want to find out what your options are. Get on the phone, call them, find out what your mental health coverage looks like, because everybody's is different. It is so different across the board. I remember I was working for a mental health company, right? I'm working for a facility, and from what I was told, I had only used my, I was going to therapy, but let's say I needed a higher level of care, right? So I was told actually that my insurance would not cover residential treatment. At the time, I was working for a residential treatment center. So I'm working for a place where I don't even have the benefit of being able to go and get my expenses paid, because that's not included in the insurance plans that they're offering me. Doesn't sound right, right? So you just kind of want to have an idea of what's covered, what your copays look like. Get all that information. If you have insurance, that's where you want to start. The next thing you want to do. So if you do not have insurance, your situation gets a little bit more tricky, but there are still counselors out here that provide what we call a sliding scale. And pretty much that just means that they are willing to work with people based on their income. So you may find therapists who will charge as little as $30 a session. You may find therapists who charge, anywhere between that and $100. It really depends on what the client's need is, and they're willing to work with you. So there are therapists out there that offer that option, practices that offer that option. You want to jump on Google and start researching therapists by location. So who is in your area, and you want to use the keyword sliding scale, because then you're more likely to see therapists who work with people who don't have insurance. There are actually some therapists who don't work with insurance at all, who've made their whole practices off of private pay. More power to them, because that just seems, like a lot. As far as like starting, I get so many of my clients through the insurance companies and things of that nature, or if they didn't have their insurance, they probably wouldn't do it, which speaks to another issue, right? Like, we need to get in the habit of prioritizing our mental health. So that means if you don't have insurance, you need to be trying to fit it in your budget. And that's the thing, is I'm not talking to people who, are literally living paycheck to paycheck and are struggling to pay their bills. I'm talking about people who be out kicking it on the weekends, spending $100, $200, $300, but want to say that they can't afford therapy. No, you just don't want to prioritize your therapy, and that's what's going on. So let's start there. But yeah, so Google is your best friend. Because not only is Google going to show you just general listings, they're going to pull up what I'm going to mention next, which is directories. You want to get familiar with directories. So directories are like Psychology Today, Therapy for Black Girls. There are more organizations who have their own therapy directories, right? Where you go in and you see who's on there, and it gives you the information. The organization that I work with, Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health, they are literally the bridge between the community and the provider. And so they have a repertoire in the process, I believe, of building a directory, where they are recommending clients, their parent clients, with providers who have availability. So you definitely want to go through those search engines, and the nice part is some of them, they will allow you to, of course, they're going to allow you to cipher through based on location, but some also allow you to do that with insurance, which, again, if you have none, if you do, and being able to see providers based on that. The next option is to talk to your doctor. We're grown. I hope you have a primary care doctor. If you don't, I encourage you to get one. Anyway, if you have a doctor that you see frequently, they should have some referrals, like medical professionals, and mental health professionals. A lot of the times we work closely together in certain cases, so they should have some sort of resource, somebody to refer you to in the event that you come to them and you say, hey, I'm really looking for a therapist, I'm having a difficult time finding one, do you have any suggestions? I just had a client email me and say that she went to see her doctor, told her doctor how well we were doing with working on her depression, and he wanted my information because he was struggling to find people to send, his clientele to. So, working relationships. If you're a therapist, that's something that's on my list, is to really connect with more medical providers so that way I can be a referral source. So, lastly is talk to your friends. A lot of us have friends who are going to therapy. They may not talk about it out loud, but if you start the conversation, again, this is how we go about normalizing going to therapy, is by talking about it, right? So if you are open with your circle and your support system and your peers about wanting to go to therapy, somebody in that circle is probably going to therapy, and they may have a suggestion for you. So explore your network, especially being that we all have, most of us are on social media, right? And so people are talking about therapy on social media. If you see somebody that lives in your area and they're talking about therapy, or their therapist or whatever, reach out and ask them, hey, can I get your therapist info? And that's, again, they may not have availability. I'm sorry. That is where people are at, which I think is crazy, because I still have availability. I'm not full yet. So I know it's other clinicians out here that still have it. It's just about finding them. And so I just wanted to do my part as far as sharing these very simple kind of steps to just jumpstart the process. I do want to encourage people, if you have been unsuccessful in finding a therapist, because I literally have started to see people who are I was looking for somebody for a year, for 2 years, and it's you don't want to give up, because the thing about those directories is that they are getting new people to sign up on them every day, right? I have been doing private practice full time for a little under a year now, and I'm just now getting on Therapy for Black Girls, and I've gotten some great responses. So there are new providers that are joining every day, new therapists who are getting their licenses and starting practices every day. So the pool of people is opening, and so you really want to jump on it when people have that availability, because something else that I see, all right, I get inquiries, right? People reach out, they seem very interested in wanting to start therapy, and they never follow through. And this is the time in which I have availability. So if you circle back to me in a year, God willing, my schedule gonna be full. I'm not gonna be taking nobody else, at least not at that moment. Like, therapists, our schedule, our availability kind of opens up in phases, right? It kind of fluctuates. Like, wintertime, we get bombarded because seasonal depression, people, the holidays, family stuff, whereas once it starts getting nice outside and it's summertime, people don't want to go therapy. They want to be outside kicking it. They feeling better, So we have these ebbs and flows of being able to accept more clients or being full. And so if you find somebody who has the availability, I'm telling you, don't put it off, because if shit hit the fan and you like, oh my God, I need to talk to somebody, you circle back and that person may not have any openings anymore, or the openings that you need, right? Like, my evening hours fill up fast. So whenever I have evening people gradually kind of like drop off, either because they just not showing up or they not prioritizing their sessions anymore, I let them know, like, I'm not going to hold this spot for you. So if you fell off, guaranteed, whoever comes in them next few clients, they're going to want that evening spot. Those go really fast. So that's something else to consider. If you're somebody who would need an after work hour, you don't want to put off a therapist who's letting you know in that moment, I have some availability. And that's not to say that you got to be ready to be committed to do it every week. Just get on their books, whether that be bi-weekly, once a month, you know what I mean? Just get on them, because, and try to be consistent. Because like I said, the moment you start missing appointments and stuff like that and being like, oh, okay, I'm gonna let you know, and I don't hear back from you, that 5, 6, 7 o'clock slot, I'm opening it up, because somebody gonna jump right in it. All right, so yeah, just don't give up, and make sure you're doing your research and your due diligence. So just to circle back and briefly go over how you want to prepare for therapy. So number one, you want to be prepared to be open and honest. If you're not going to, why pay to lie? Why go to therapy and pay somebody to lie to them? You could do that at home. You could do that with your friends and your family. You ain't got to come to us to do that, So be prepared to know what you're walking into, as far as like, this is a space that's meant for me to be vulnerable. Know why you're looking for therapy. Don't come. If I ask you, because that's what the therapist is going to ask you, what brought you to me? Be prepared to speak on that. I know sometimes people get tight-lipped because it may be something that they have shame about, or they have embarrassment behind, but this is the space for that. So you got to be willing to let me know, because if you just like, oh, well, what I'm going to do with that? What I'm going to do with that? You want to sit here and do what? Because I can't do nothing with that, okay? You want to, when you start getting in a good flow of therapy, you want to keep notes in between your sessions, okay? It is nothing more frustrating for a therapist than when a client comes in, maybe you haven't seen them, and especially because most of my clients are like 2 weeks, so bi-weekly, and they can't remember nothing that had happened over the last 2 weeks. They just like, oh, I've been good. What do you want me to do with that? Okay, so keep some notes. They don't have to be in depth, or people just be like, no. I've been in therapy for 6 years at this point, and I have a therapy note in my phone. So as things happen, throughout my day or my week, usually I tell people, like, do a weekly reflection, right? If it's not a day-to-day thing, do a weekly reflection on like a Sunday, where you just kind of sit and think about what happened in your week, what feelings or situations showed up for you, and just jot them in a note. It don't have to be nothing extensive. Like, mine be like, argument with such and such. Went to dad's house. Because again, like, it's meant for you to trigger the memory for you. So I can use a few keywords and I'm like, oh, so let me tell you how this nigga had me fucked up. And I can grab onto the story just based off the fact that I wrote, Todd date. It's not hard. So just keep that in mind. It's like, you want to have things to bring to your session. I don't think there's ever been a session for me where I haven't had what I was coming to that session with. And I know that makes as a therapist and as somebody in therapy, it makes the session easier. It makes your therapist job a little easier, because now I don't have to like pick at straws and re-ask you the same things. How's your family? How's work? How, like come with something. Because again, this is your session. You should be ready to use it in the way that you feel necessary and to go over the things that came up for you. Next. Okay, so I just talked about this. So having an understanding of what you want to discuss prior to your session. I know some people, they get busy during the weekend and they forget and they be like, oh shit, I got therapy today. So that's why I'm saying keep notes every few days if you can, especially when more significant things happen. So that way you have something to reference. You can, if some people love to journal, like that's what a journal is for. Having an understanding of what you want to get out of therapy. Because if you just come in to like talk to me, I mean, we could talk and I'm going to try to put some stuff together. But again, this is for you. You need to have an understanding of, I'm coming here, what do I want to focus on? What changes do I want to see from myself? You want to be prepared to make change and do homework. So all therapists don't assign homework. I usually, if I see some things that you could benefit from reading or learning about, I'm gonna assign you some homework. But if you're a person who goes to therapy and your therapist doesn't give you homework and you would like some, bring that up, right? Don't just be like, oh, I feel like I don't get nothing to work on. That may just be their personal style, but that doesn't mean that they don't have anything that they couldn't give you to work on. So things to consider, right? I call these inner mind concerns. So what do you think about, like, when you lay down at night and you're trying to shut your brain off, but your brain want to do all this shit and it want to bring up all the stuff that you've never been through, that you never want to think about? Write that stuff down, because that's what you want to talk about in therapy. You want to consider what you struggle with emotionally and mentally. And this is kind of like the before process, right? So when we have that first session and we're having that assessment and we're talking about what brought you to therapy, you really want to think about where do you find your flaws at as far as your mental state and your emotional state? What do other people say about you that you may not see or understand? And you like, they always saying this and I just don't understand. I feel like people, they just against me, blah, 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 blah. You want to consider your relationships. What do they look like? What flaws do they have? How could they improve? And again, like, we spend most of our time at work or in school. So as it relates to work and school, do you feel like you're living in your purpose? Do you feel like you're on the right track? Are you reaching your highest potential? Do you feel stuck? Is there something you would rather be doing? What are your interests? And those are good starting points for therapy. Just bringing that stuff to the table. And that gives us a lot to work with, because that's the thing is, like, most therapists, you can say a few things and we can go in there and we can grab it out. We can build on that. But if you come in with nothing, I can't do nothing with nothing. And we can sit here and talk about what we've been watching on Netflix for all I care. Which is also considered like rapport building too. Every session, and that's what I think people don't understand as far as like their expectations. I get a lot of people that come in and are like, am I supposed to be doing this? Or are we supposed to be? Therapy doesn't look one way. So some sessions we're going to have, they're going to be lighthearted. We're going to kiki and crack jokes. And we may talk about Netflix or hair or nails or whatever. And then we're going to have sessions where we get to the deep stuff, where you're crying, where you're in your feelings, where we're processing trauma. So you want a good balance because, again, the work comes in and you want to be able to get through those difficult sessions. But we also are going to have days where things are good. They're going pretty well. So our check-ins may look a little different, and that's okay. All right. So the last thing I want to touch on is pretty much, how do you know your therapist is the right fit? All right. And this is really, I wanted to address this because I've heard some horror stories about people who went to therapy and I didn't know what I was hearing. Like, just the fact that the therapist wasn't showing up to session, was like nodding out or talking about their Louboutins and shit. Like, I don't know the context, but from what I remember, it's a mess. So I want to affirm that if that shit is happening in your session, run. Like, you don't have to sit through that. Like, especially if something in your gut is telling you, like, I don't know if this is how therapy is supposed to go, you know. And that's the thing, right, is you could bring that to the table. You can mention the things that you're seeing and how you feel about them, you know, and give that therapist maybe a chance to either change or correct their behavior, or depending on how they respond, you may just want to start looking for somebody else. But basic things to let you know it's the right fit. So you feel comfortable. Like, and sometimes people get confused because they're like, sometimes this feels like friendship, like we cool, like we homies. And a part of it should. You should feel that comfortable. I want my clients to feel that comfortable with me. But what I know I'm bringing to the table is I'm keeping in mind what your treatment goals are, what we're meant to be working on. And again, it's not going to be all fun and games either. Like, because again, one of the other things is your therapist challenges you in healthy ways, and they help to hold you accountable. If I see you on some bullshit, I'm going to call it out. Because what am I here for? If you just wanted a friend who was going to validate you, you ain't need me for that. So, you don't feel judged, right? You want to be able to express things that may have been embarrassing, that may have made you feel guilty or shameful. And so you want to have a space with your therapist where you feel like they validate your experiences. They are able to emotionally comfort you. Your therapist validates your feelings. That doesn't mean that they're always going to condone or agree with your reactions to your feelings. Like I tell people, the feeling is valid. The feeling is valid. It's the reactions and the responses that sometimes are not in alignment with what that feeling is, or are overdone to the point where it causes its problematic behavior. Okay, so I talked about that. Holds you accountable. Your therapist is consistent, okay? Your therapist should not be like missing sessions all willy-nilly, or, you know, I understand, especially being in private practice, right? So sometimes, especially now with summertime rolling around, I'm going on vacations. I've had to figure out how to, like, let's say I'm going to be gone from a Wednesday to a Sunday. And I got clients that Wednesday, that Thursday, or that Friday. I got to figure out where I'm going to put them people, how I'm going to see them. I can't neglect it, right? So the longest I would let a client go who is a bi-weekly, you know, client is a month, because that means for some reason, and that's not necessarily sometimes on my accord, sometimes the client doesn't mind going that long. But anything kind of after that, which is off the therapist accord, like they steady running out of town, or they got a whole bunch of stuff going on, so they constantly having to move your schedule, your appointment around, you don't want that. You want somebody that's going to be pretty consistent. I'm real big on like same day, same time, see you in 2 weeks, because that helps me keep things in order, and that keeps you understanding when, you know, your therapy prioritized. Your therapist listens attentively and is engaged. Now, I understand the occasional, I'm sorry, could you repeat that, right? I'm not going to lie. I've had a moment or two where I done, you know, but again, I got to bring it back. If I notice myself in that space, I have to be really intentional about making sure I'm present in the session. And so it's one of those things where your therapist shouldn't be going out on tangents. You shouldn't be constantly repeating yourself because they wasn't listening. Red flags. And lastly, your therapist does not make the session about them. Now, I'm good for sharing a personal anecdote if it's on topic, right? If it illustrates a point or a concept. I'm not just finna be like coming in the session, you know, how was y'all? Look, let me tell you what I did last weekend. Why are we talking about me? We here to talk about you. So if your therapist is like going out of her way or his way to talk about things that are unrelated to the session, or they got some other stuff that they ain't dealt with, and so they monopolizing the session to talk about something that you may have brought up, you don't want that. You don't want that. Okay? So I told y'all, I'm cute, quick, to the point. I just want you all to be mindful of, number one, the process. what your expectations are, and being able to be vocal in communicating, you know, what you're looking for when you show up at somebody's, well, I ain't gonna say show up at somebody's doorstep, because a lot of us still virtual. I am. When you show up in my Zoom meeting, what we talking about? What we doing today? Like, what's been going on? Because this is for you. It's not for me. I mean, it's my livelihood, but the purpose is for you to walk away from this feeling like you've done some healing, like you've had some growth, and like this person is a good fit for you. Okay, so make sure you follow the business Instagram. I'll have all these tips listed there. And yeah, y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day.